What Art Rooney too said matters, and not because it was meant to calm anyone down. He made it clear from the start that this hire was never about winning a press conference, never about social media approval, and never about noise from the outside. In his own words, this was about choosing the coach he believes can win games and lead the Pittsburgh Steelers into what he called the next winning phase of Steelers football. That message alone tells you the front office fully understands how angry and frustrated a large portion of this fan base is right now, and yet they chose to move forward anyway. Rooney openly acknowledged the reaction, admitted that many fans are upset, and still doubled down by saying he believes people are going to love Coach Mike. That alone sets the tone for everything that follows, because this is not an owner unaware of the backlash. This is an owner who sees it clearly and is choosing to ignore it in favor of his own conviction. And that conviction centers on Mike McCarthy, a 62-year-old offensive-minded head coach with a resume that, on paper, is hard to dismiss. 12 playoff appearances, 13 winning seasons across 18 years as a head coach, a Super Bowl ring, a long track record of success, including developing a quarterback like Joe Montana earlier in his career and winning at the highest level with Aaron Rodgers. McCarthy is not a bad coach, and that is not where the anger is really coming from. Very few fans are sitting here saying Mike McCarthy is incompetent or incapable of coaching football. The frustration runs much deeper than that, and it has everything to do with timing, direction, and what many believed this moment was supposed to represent for the franchise. There is a split within the fan base that cannot be ignored. Some fans were never going to love any hire. Some were fine with McCarthy even if he was not their top choice. And some are okay with it now simply because he is officially the head coach. But there is also a massive portion of Steelers fans who feel this process was rushed, that the organization jumped the gun, and that a rare opportunity to reset the direction of the franchise was passed over. This moment, for many, felt like the natural end of an era. The frustration that boiled over during the loss to Buffalo when chants calling for change became impossible to ignore, marked what felt like the beginning of the end. The season ends, Mike Tomlin steps down because he believed it was the right move for the organization, and suddenly the door is open to something new. That context is critical. Art Rooney then steps to the podium and says he does not believe in the word rebuild. He wants this team to remain a contender every single season. He admits 9-8 is not good enough, but he also frames it as better than what things could be. And from that mindset, the hire of Mike McCarthy makes sense. This is not a long-term developmental swing. This is a move rooted in the belief that the Steelers can compete right now, that they can stay within the winning tradition without tearing everything down. Rooney believes McCarthy is the man who can do that, and that belief is unwavering. But here is where the conversation shifts, because for years, the blame for stagnation, for the standards slipping, for the inability to take the next step was placed almost entirely on Mike Tomlin. And while Tomlin absolutely had his share of responsibility, this hire forces a different question into the spotlight. Who actually set the standard? Who decided what acceptable looked like? When Art Rooney says he wants to contend every year and does not believe in rebuilding, that philosophy comes directly from the top. This decision feels like a legacy move, a defining choice near the end of his run as owner and team president. He knows the fans are unhappy, he knows the criticism is loud, and he still believes this is the right path. From Rooney's perspective, this is the kind of move that could define how he is remembered. If it works, if Mike McCarthy leads this team to meaningful playoff success, or even a Super Bowl in the next few years, this becomes the bold, controversial decision that paid off. It becomes the moment where everyone doubted him, and he was right. But if it fails, if the Steelers remain stuck in the same cycle, hovering around 9 wins, struggling in the playoffs or missing them altogether, then this hire becomes something very different. It becomes a symbol of desperation, of choosing short-term familiarity over long-term vision, of believing the team was closer than it actually is. And that is the heart of the concern. This roster is not one piece away. The Steelers did not lose in embarrassing fashion because they were almost there. They are missing significant pieces, including at the quarterback position. And hiring a coach built to win now assumes a foundation that simply may not exist. That risk falls squarely on Art Rooney's shoulders. This is not just about Mike McCarthy. This is about what the organization believes itself to be right now versus what many fans see on the field. So now it becomes a waiting game. Either this move ages beautifully and reshapes the narrative around the Steelers for years to come, or it amplifies every frustration fans already feel about the direction of the franchise and how the final chapter of Art Rooney's tenure is written. With all of that said, how do you feel about this hire when you look at where the Steelers truly are as a team right now? That question hangs over everything moving forward, because now there is no turning back. The The decision has been made, the contract is signed, and Mike McCarthy is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. From this point on, every move, every press conference, every Sunday result will be filtered through this moment. Fair or not, that is the reality. And this is where the conversation with the fan base gets even more complicated, because belief and reality are about to collide in real time. Art Rooney too believes this team can win now. That belief is not accidental and it is not careless. It comes from a philosophy that has defined this franchise for decades. The idea that the Steelers do not tear things down, that they compete every year, that they find ways to stay relevant even when the roster is flawed. Hiring Mike McCarthy is a direct extension of that mindset. He is experienced, he has been through pressure, he has navigated locker rooms with stars, expectations, and Super Bowl war-bust seasons. Rooney is betting that stability and experience can squeeze more out of this roster than uncertainty and long-term development ever could. But the risk is obvious. Experience does not automatically fix structural problems. It does not magically solve roster holes or erase years of questionable decisions. The Steelers are not a quarterback away from a championship. They are not one coordinator away. They are not one clever scheme away. They are multiple pieces away, and that reality does not disappear just because a proven coach walks into the building. That is why so many fans feel uneasy. This hire feels like it assumes the hard part is already done, when in truth, the hardest part may still be ahead. And yet, there is another side to this that cannot be ignored. Mike McCarthy is walking into an organization that desperately wants direction. After years of frustration, inconsistency, and watching the gap between the Steelers and the true contenders grow wider, there is at least clarity now. The franchise has chosen a path. There will be no half measures in philosophy, no vague typings, no waiting to see what happens. This is a declaration that the Steelers are pushing forward, not backward, even if the foundation is shaky. For some fans, that alone is refreshing. The pressure on McCarthy will be immediate and relentless. There will be no grace period, no rebuilding excuses, no patience from a fan base that feels it has already waited long enough. Every decision he makes will be compared not just to what came before, but to what could have been. Every loss will revive the conversation about younger candidates, missed opportunities, and whether the franchise misunderstood its own moment. That is the weight he inherits on day one. And hovering over all of it is Art Rooney's legacy. Fairly or unfairly, this stretch will define how his final years are remembered. The hires, the drafts, the direction. Mike McCarthy is not just a coach choice, he is a statement about how Rooney views the Steelers and how he wants history to judge him. If this works, it reframes everything. If it doesn't, it sharpens the criticism and cements the idea that the franchise chose familiarity when it needed transformation. Now the waiting begins. The talking turns into watching, and the only thing that will quiet this debate is what happens on the field. Until then, the divide remains. The questions linger, and the stakes could not be higher for everyone involved. What happens next will quietly reveal whether this was conviction or miscalculation. Because once the emotion fades and the headlines move on, the Steelers are left with the same roster, the same questions, and now a coach whose reputation is built on winning with certainty, not building through uncertainty. Mike McCarthy's history tells us he thrives when the structure is clear, when expectations are defined, and when the organization believes it is ready to compete. That is exactly the environment Art Rooney thinks exists in Pittsburgh right now. The disconnect is that a large part of the fan base simply does not see the same thing.
This is why the word now keeps coming back into the conversation. This hire screams urgency. It suggests that the organization believes the window is already open, or at least that it can be forced open with the right leadership. There is no patience baked into this decision. There is no long runway. McCarthy is not here to grow with the roster. He is here to elevate it immediately. And that raises a critical question that will define the early part of his tenure. What happens when the results don't match the expectations right away? Because the early stages matter more than people want to admit. The first losing streak, the first ugly offensive performance, the first game where the same old problems show up again. Those moments will not be viewed in isolation. They will be viewed as confirmation or warning signs. Fans will not just be reacting to wins and losses. They will be reacting to what those games say about whether this team was actually ready for a hire like this in the first place. At the same time, this move also removes excuses from the building. Experience is now on the sideline. A Super Bowl winning coach is in charge. If things stall, the conversation shifts away from coaching stability and squarely onto roster construction and organizational philosophy. That pressure does not land only on McCarthy. It lands on Art Rooney in the front office as well. This is a moment where accountability becomes unavoidable. That is why this hire feels so heavy. It is not just about one season. It is about whether the Steelers truly understand where they are in their own timeline, whether staying competitive every year is enough, or whether it has quietly become the ceiling instead of the standard. Mike McCarthy will be the test case for that belief. If he lifts this team, the philosophy is validated. If he doesn't, the questions get louder and far harder to dismiss. And that is what makes this stretch so important. The Steelers are no longer talking about change. They have made it. Now the only thing left is to see what that change actually means. And even beyond wins and losses, the early months will tell us a lot about alignment inside the building. How aggressive the Steelers are in roster decisions. How they approach the quarterback situation. Whether this feels like an organization pushing its chips in, or one trying to convince itself it already has enough. Mike McCarthy's presence will force clarity, because his track record does not allow for drifting. He has coached teams with expectations, and that tends to expose cracks quickly when the foundation is not strong enough. This is also where the emotional side of the fan base comes back into play. Steelers fans are not just upset because of a name on a contract. They are upset because this moment felt like a crossroads. A rare chance to pause, reset, and build toward something new. Instead, the franchise chose continuity through experience rather than reinvention through potential. That does not automatically make it wrong, but it does make it risky. And risk without transparency is what creates distrust. Mike McCarthy did not ask for this context, but he inherits it anyway. Every press conference, every comment about standards, expectations, or patience will be analyzed. If he talks about winning now, fans will ask with what roster. If he talks about development, fans will ask why hire him in the first place. That tension is unavoidable, and how he handles it may matter just as much as what happens on Sundays. What cannot be ignored is that this move has officially shifted the spotlight upward. The coaching change was supposed to answer questions. Instead, it has raised bigger ones about philosophy, direction, and self-awareness at the top of the organization. Mike McCarthy is now the face of those decisions, fairly or not. He becomes the proof point for whether the Steelers' belief in staying competitive every year is still a strength, or whether it has slowly become a limitation. And that is why this moment will define more than just a season. It will define how this era of Steelers football is remembered, either as the stretch where experience steadied the franchise and brought it back to relevance, or as the moment where the organization refused to fully confront where it stood. Now it's your turn. Do you see this as the right move for the Steelers right now, or does it feel like a gamble built on hope instead of reality? And the longer this conversation goes on, the clearer it becomes that this is not really about Mike McCarthy the coach, but about what the Steelers believe success looks like in today's NFL. For years, being competitive, hovering above .500, and sneaking into the postseason was treated as proof of stability. But the league has changed, and so has the standard for relevance. Fans are no longer measuring success by simply getting in. They are measuring it by whether you can actually threaten the top teams when you get there. That gap is where all this tension lives. By hiring McCarthy, the Steelers are effectively saying they believe that gap can be closed without stepping back first. That belief is bold, but it also places enormous pressure on every decision that follows. Draft picks can no longer be long-term projects